My son never knew who I really was. To him, I was just his mother. The woman who woke up before dawn, packed leftovers for lunch, and came home smelling of coffee and long hours. Ordinary, predictable, forgettable. And I let him believe that. What he didn't know was that I lived a second life, a quiet, powerful one. I made decisions that moved markets, signed contracts that carried more zeros than he'd ever seen. But I never told him. Not once, because I didn't want him to grow up worshiping money. I wanted him to respect effort, to understand value without seeing price tags. So, I lived simply. A modest apartment, old furniture polished clean, clothes that never tried to impress. True strength, I've learned, doesn't raise its voice. It just stands still and lets others talk. Then, one Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. "Mom," he said, "can you do me a favor? Lisa's parents are visiting. We're having dinner on Saturday. I'd love for you to come." His tone was careful. "Too careful, of course," I said. "Where?" He hesitated. "At L'Amour, downtown." A pause. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple. That word again. Soft, harmless, yet heavy enough to bruise. He said it the way someone might apologize for an old sweater they're embarrassed to wear in front of company. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "All right, Michael. I'll be there." When the call ended, I looked around my living room. Sunlight touching the faded curtains, the worn sofa, the family photos along the shelf. Everything looked smaller somehow. Still warm, still mine, but smaller. For a long moment, I just sat there quiet. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. Not in him, but in the distance money builds between people. If he believed I was ordinary, then that's who I'd be. Just for one night. Not to prove him wrong, but to see who his new family really was. Saturday evening came with a thin drizzle. The kind that makes city lights blur into gold streaks on wet glass. I opened my closet and picked the dullest dress I owned. Beige, wrinkled, shapeless. Old shoes. No jewelry. I tied my hair back in a loose knot and studied my reflection. The mirror showed a woman faded by life. Tired eyes. Soft shoulders. Invisible. Perfect. The taxi ride to L'Amour was silent. Through the window, I watched the city glow brighter as night fell. Towers glittering like glass kingdoms. I wondered which kingdom my son thought he belonged to now. When the car stopped, I stepped out into a world of luxury. Valets in white gloves, marble steps shining under golden light. Inside, chandeliers shimmered like captured stars. The hum of money was everywhere. Low laughter, the clink of crystal glasses, whispers wrapped in confidence. And then I saw them. Michael stood near a corner table by the window, dressed in a navy suit that fit him too well. His smile flickered when he saw me. Relief mixed with something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Beside him was Lisa, polished and perfect. Her cream dress sparkled under the chandeliers. She looked like she belonged here. Her eyes, though, darted nervously between me and the entrance, and across from her sat her parents, Victoria and Henry Collins. They looked like a magazine cover brought to life. Victoria in an emerald gown, diamonds tracing her neckline like captured frost. Henry, tall and rigid, wearing a gray suit that whispered custom tailoring. Even from across the room, I could smell their perfume. Expensive, heavy, rehearsed. Michael waved me over, his shoulders tense. "Mom, you came." "Of course," I said softly, walking toward them. My shoes made no sound on the marble floor. Lisa greeted me with a light kiss on the cheek. "So good to see you, Mrs. Carter." Her smile was polite but strained. Then she turned. "Mom, Dad, this is Michael's mother." Victoria's eyes slid over me, slow and calculating. The smile she gave was thin as glass. "How lovely to finally meet you," she said. "The pleasure's mine," I replied, keeping my voice low. Henry shook my hand lightly, as if worried my touch might leave a mark. We sat. My chair was placed just slightly apart from theirs, a fraction farther from the center, yet far enough to make the message clear. A waiter approached, handing out menus printed entirely in French. I opened mine and frowned deliberately, letting confusion show. Victoria noticed instantly. "Would you like help with the menu, dear?" "Yes, please," I said, pretending to sound embarrassed. She nodded, smiling too sweetly. "Why don't we order something light for you? Nothing too complicated." She turned to the waiter. "Maybe the soup? And water." Her tone was dipped in honey and arrogance. As the waiter left, the conversation began. Soft, polished, practiced. They spoke of their flight, the view from their hotel suite, a charity gala they'd attended just last week in Paris. The words rolled off their tongues like jewelry, each one glittering, unnecessary. I smiled. I nodded. I let them shine, but between their sentences I looked at Michael. His jaw was tight. His eyes avoided mine. He was trying to keep everything smooth, everyone calm, and that hurt more than any insult could. My own son, caught between pride and shame. For a brief moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake keeping my world hidden from him. Maybe if he'd known, he wouldn't have felt so small beside these people. But then I remembered why I'd done it. Humility is learned, not inherited. The food arrived, plates that looked more like art than dinner. Victoria smiled proudly at her dish. "Imported truffle risotto," she said, as though announcing a title. "It looks beautiful," I replied softly. A few moments passed before she leaned forward, her voice dropping into that careful, sweet register. "You know, Alina, Henry and I always believe families should support one another. When Lisa and Michael got married, we helped a little. The house, the honeymoon, some essentials. You know how it is." Her eyes gleamed, waiting. I smiled faintly. "That's wonderful. And you?" she asked. "Were you able to help them with anything?" I looked down at my plate. "Not much. Just a small gift," her lips curled. How thoughtful. "The amount doesn't matter. It's the intention that counts." A pause. Long. Cold. The chandelier light caught her diamonds, scattering tiny shards of color across her perfect face. And for the first time, I noticed how the glow around her looked almost cruel. Bright, blinding, sharp. I glanced at my own hands, clean, unpolished, resting on an old handbag faded by years. There, in that glittering room, I realized something. Silence has its own kind of power. I didn't need to compete. I just needed to watch, to let them show me who they were when they thought I was nothing. Then, as dessert arrived, Victoria's tone changed. Gentle, cautious, almost maternal. "Alina," she said, We wanted to discuss something as a family. Michael stiffened. Mom, maybe we should... Let her finish, Henry murmured. Victoria smiled, tilting her head slightly. It's just that Michael worries about you. Living alone can be difficult at your age, especially on a limited income. Henry and I thought perhaps we could help. Just a small allowance each month. Enough to make things easier. We insist. Her words were dipped in pity, but her eyes were testing me, waiting to see how quickly I'd grab the bait. I looked at her quietly, then nodded once. That's very generous of you. She smiled, satisfied. We only want what's best for everyone. I held her gaze. Of course, but inside something shifted. The stillness cracked. The silence I'd carried all evening began to harden into resolve. They had no idea who was sitting across from them. I smiled, calm and polite as the candlelight flickered between us. Because in the next few minutes, I was going to teach them what real class looks like, and it wouldn't cost a cent. The restaurant felt colder after Victoria spoke. Not from the air conditioning, but from the silence that followed. Even the piano seemed to hesitate before fading away. She had just offered to help me financially. A monthly allowance, she called it. Polite words for pity. I smiled at her, soft and harmless. Inside, something heavier moved. Not anger, disappointment. That quiet burn that doesn't shout. It just settles deep. Michael shifted beside her, fingers twitching against the table. Mom, you don't have to... I lifted a hand. It's all right, darling. Then to Victoria. Your offer is kind. Truly, you have a generous heart. Her eyes brightened, victory flashing quick. Oh, it's nothing, dear. We just like to help where we can. After all, we're family now. Family. The word didn't fit. Family means warmth. This felt like frost. I folded my hands neatly. It's thoughtful, I said slowly. But you don't need to worry about me. I've managed fine so far. Henry gave a small, amused chuckle. There's managing, he said, pausing just enough to sound superior. And then there's living. These are hard times for, well, the ordinary. The pause hit like a needle. I smiled. True, but I've learned to live within my means. Victoria tilted her head. That's admirable. Not everyone can be happy with so little. Her tone glittered. All sugar, no sincerity. Michael said nothing. Not a word. He just stared at his plate, trying to stay invisible. He wasn't protecting me anymore. He was protecting his comfort. That truth stung sharper than their condescension. I turned toward the window. Outside, the rain traced silver lines down the glass, bending the city lights into blurred halos. Inside, everything gleamed. Crystal, jewels, laughter rehearsed to sound effortless, and me, sitting in a dress the color of dust. A quiet ghost at a golden table. For a second, I pitied her. Not for her cruelty, but for how small it made her. Victoria leaned closer. You're very composed, Alina. Not everyone could handle such an evening so gracefully. I met her eyes. Why would I need to handle anything? She faltered. Oh, I didn't mean... It's all right, I said softly. You can say what you mean. I've lived long enough to recognize pity when it sits across from me. The air thickened. Henry's glass paused mid-lift. Lisa pretended to check her phone. Mom, Michael murmured. I smiled. It's fine, dear. Just conversation. Then calmly. You think I'm poor? That's fine. You're entitled to your assumptions. But poor people don't need your money. They need your respect. Silence again. Dense. Electric. The funny thing about silence, it gives people just enough time to doubt themselves. Victoria laughed lightly, the sound brittle. My dear, you misunderstand me. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. Her eyes flickered. The balance in the room shifted. The invisible scales tipped. I stayed still. Stillness, I'd learned, unnerves people who expect apology. The waiter returned to clear plates. I thanked him. He nodded once, a quiet ally. Trying to recover, Victoria changed tack. So, Alina, what do you do for fun? Any hobbies? Not many, I said. I read. I travel sometimes. Travel? She echoed, eyebrows raised. Oh, how nice. Where to? A few cities here and there, I said. Geneva was productive. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. Productive? She repeated. I simply smiled. Something like that. Her confidence wavered. The story she'd written about me was starting to smudge. Lisa jumped in. Mom, Dad, you should try the dessert here. It's lovely. The rain whispered against the glass. Then Henry spoke softer this time. You remind me of my mother. She used to say silence is strength. Never got what she meant. She was right, I said. Silence isn't weakness. It's control. Knowing when to speak and when to let others reveal themselves. He nodded slowly. Victoria didn't. Her gaze was elsewhere, chasing unanswered questions. Then came the turning point. A waiter appeared with a small silver tray. Excuse me, he said. Mrs. Carter, your driver just called. Should he bring the car around now or in 15 minutes? The table froze. Michael blinked. Driver? For a moment, even the rain seemed to stop listening. I smiled. Tell him 15 minutes, please. The waiter bowed and left. Victoria blinked hard, recalibrating. Oh, you have a driver. How nice. A friend helping you out, I assume? Something like that. No one spoke. The silence tasted different now, curious, heavy. Michael's jaw tightened. Lisa's eyes darted between us. Victoria's hand twitched toward her wine glass but didn't lift it. When the waiter returned with the bill, he placed it near her. Before she could reach, he said politely, It's already settled. Mrs. Carter took care of it when she arrived. The stillness deepened. You paid? Victoria whispered. Yes, I said softly. I made the reservation earlier this week. I wanted to be sure everything went smoothly. Her mouth parted. But why? For a second, I wondered if proving them wrong still mattered. Then I realized it wasn't about them anymore. I looked at her gently, because I could, and because sometimes it's kind to let others rest. I stood. My old dress brushed softly against the chair. Around me, gold light trembled across glass and silk, her diamonds blazing while mine were the calm reflections in her eyes. And for the first time that night, she didn't look down on me. She looked up. She thought she'd seen the real me, but she hadn't even seen the surface. The rain had softened into a mist by the time we stepped out of the restaurant. Streetlights shimmered on the wet pavement, turning the city into a haze of gold and gray. The air between us still buzzed, heavy, charged, unfinished. Michael walked beside me, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Lisa followed a step behind, her heels tapping sharp and uncertain. Behind us, Victoria and Henry whispered in low, clipped tones, the sound of control cracking. No one spoke until we reached the valet stand. Then Michael exhaled sharply. "Mom, you didn't have to pay." "I know," I said. "That's why I did." He frowned. "You embarrassed them." I stopped walking. "Did I?" He looked at me, really looked. "You knew what you were doing." I smiled faintly. "Yes, Michael." "I did," Lisa spoke softly, trying to soothe the tension. "It's fine. Just dinner." But it wasn't just dinner. It never is when people use courtesy as a cage. Ben, my driver, waited under a wide black umbrella. "Evening, ma'am," he said. "Evening, Ben," I replied. "Thank you," Michael's brow furrowed. "You really have a driver?" "I've had one for years," I said, glancing at Ben with warmth. "He's more than a driver," Ben smiled. 30 years, ma'am?" Victoria's laugh was tight. "Well, that's impressive. Loyalty like that is rare." "It is," I said evenly, "but loyalty isn't bought. It's earned." Then I stepped into the car, closing the door softly behind me. As the city lights slid past, reflections shimmered across the window. White, gold, red. Michael and Lisa grew smaller in the mirror until they vanished completely. They'd walked in believing they understood the world. Tonight I'd shown them how little they truly saw. Ben drove quietly, the hum of the engine like a heartbeat in the dark. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked gently. "Yes," I said. "Though it's funny, truth makes people flinch more than lies ever do." He smiled. "It always does." Rain whispered against the glass as the city thinned into quiet streets. When I reached home, the apartment felt smaller but real, the way honesty always does after pretense. I took off my shoes, poured tea, and sat near the window. The faint reflection of my own face stared back. Michael's silence lingered in my mind. There was something behind it. Guilt, maybe, or something deeper. For the first time, my son looked at me with fear. Not of me, but of how little he knew me. I told myself the night was over. But the past never sleeps that easily. The phone buzzed on the table. The screen glowed with an international number. Geneva, I didn't answer. I just watched it ring, the vibration faint but insistent, until it stopped. Next to the phone sat a small locked drawer. My hand drifted toward the key, then stopped. Not tonight. There were still things Michael didn't know. Not about my money, but about what I'd done to earn it. Morning came gray and cold. The fog outside pressed against the windows, muting the world. I was stirring sugar into my coffee when Michael called. His voice was steady but low. "Can I come over?" "Of course," I said. He arrived soon after, looking as though sleep hadn't helped him. I poured him coffee and watched as he stared at the table instead of me. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Tell you what?" "That you're not who I thought you were," I smiled. "And who did you think I was?" "Just normal," he said quietly. "You made them look small last night." "No," I said softly. "I just stopped pretending to be smaller than I am." He looked up, eyes uncertain. "They're curious now. They're coming by." "Of course they are," I murmured. "People like that never sleep easy around unanswered questions." "Mom, please," he said, rubbing his temple. "Promise me you'll be polite." "I'm always polite," I said. "It's just that people mistake calm for permission." That evening, a car door closed outside. I glanced out and saw Victoria and Henry stepping through the mist. Umbrellas open, posture perfect. I opened the door before they could knock. "Mrs. Collins, Mr. Collins, please come in." Victoria's smile was paper thin. "We were nearby and thought we'd stop by. I must say it's impressive how well you've kept such a simple life." "Simple suits me," I said smoothly. "Tea? That would be lovely," she replied, eyes scanning the room. They entered cautiously, like stepping into a story they didn't yet understand. Henry paused by the shelves. His eyes caught on a framed photo, me standing before a tall glass building, sunlight glinting off mirrored windows. "Nice picture," he said. "Where was it taken?" "Geneva," I said. Victoria's head tilted slightly. "Geneva?" she echoed barely above a whisper. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction before she smiled again. I returned the smile. "A long time ago, we sat." The air was soft and heavy, like rain before it falls. Victoria stirred her tea, each clink of the spoon measured. "Last night was quite something," she said finally. "You surprised us?" "That seems to happen often lately," I said. Her lips curved, polite but sharp. "You're very composed, Mrs. Carter. Some might even call it practiced." "I've had practice," I said lightly. The quiet stretched between us until it almost hummed. Then she leaned in slightly. "So tell me, what exactly do you do?" The question wasn't casual. It was a test. I set my cup down gently, letting the small click cut through the air. "I oversee operations that make other people's wealth possible," her brow creased. "Meaning?" "Meaning," I said, voice calm. "I understand money better than most people who think they have it." Henry blinked, unsure whether to admire or fear the answer. "And the title?" Victoria asked carefully. "Titles impress people who need something to bow to," I said. "I prefer results." For once, Victoria didn't reply. She only looked at me, searching for something she couldn't categorize. I smiled softly. "You wanted to know why I live simply. It's because I can. Simplicity is power when it's a choice." Her eyes flickered, shame and admiration colliding. I rose. "Thank you for visiting." She stood slowly, smoothing her dress, the faintest tremor in her composure. "Yes," she said. "We should do this again." She smiled. Small, deliberate, dangerous. And as she stepped into the fading light, her reflection passed across the window beside me. Eyes cold, calculating, alive. And as she smiled that polite, fragile smile, I knew she'd already made her next move. I watched Victoria fade into the fog, her red umbrella glowing like a wound in the dark. Her heels clicked until silence swallowed them. That smile she'd left behind wasn't goodbye. It was strategy. Ben waited by the curb. "You all right, ma'am?" "I'm fine," I said, though my voice carried the tremor of someone not entirely sure. I locked the door behind me, poured tea, and sat by the window. The room was still, but the quiet hummed. My jaw ached from keeping it steady. The phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Thank you for the tea. We'll be in touch soon." Not a thank you. A move. 2 days drifted by in slow focus. Work meetings. Polite smiles. But something about the silence between tasks kept tightening. Every reflection, glass doors, chrome handles, looked like it might blink back. Then on Thursday afternoon, my phone lit up again. Dinner this Saturday. Our place, family only, no greeting, no signature, just an address. Victoria.Saturday came colder than the forecast promised. The city felt metallic, edges sharpened by wind. I almost canceled. Almost. But curiosity's a stubborn thing. The penthouse looked carved from light itself. Marble floors, chandeliers, windows big enough to swallow the skyline. Victoria met me at the door in crimson silk. "Alina," she said warmly. "You came. Wouldn't miss it. Come in," she said. It's family, that word again. A trap dressed as welcome. Inside, Michael stood near the table, uneasy. Lisa clung to his arm. Henry poured wine with too much precision. The table glittered. Crystal, silver, reflections of reflections. It wasn't dinner. It was theater. Red or white? Henry asked. Water's fine, I said. Victoria's laugh came too bright. Still disciplined, I see. I smiled, though my jaw trembled faintly. Old habits die hard. Conversation danced on safe topics. Weather, travel, art. But under it, tension pulsed. Then Victoria leaned forward, chin resting on her hand. I've been thinking about our last chat, she said. You're fascinating. So private, so steady. Privacy is underrated, I said. Yes, she said, tone tightening. But secrets shape families. Wouldn't you agree? Lisa's fork slipped, clinking against her plate. The sound cracked through the room. Michael glanced up, startled. It's fine, he murmured. I didn't look away from Victoria. Some secrets protect more than they hide. Her smile flickered. You left Geneva in 2011, didn't you? Just after the Duval acquisition collapsed. The room froze. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Michael's head snapped toward me. Mom? I didn't answer. I watched Victoria instead. You've done impressive research, she shrugged, casual. Curiosity? I like to know the people my family connects with. Curiosity's dangerous when it wanders into locked rooms, I said. Her eyes gleamed. And yet, sometimes the doors open so easily. Henry cleared his throat, nervous. Maybe we should... She waved him off. No, it's fine. I admire her. Women who rebuild from ashes fascinate me. Some fires are deliberate, I said softly. Michael's voice cracked. Mom, what is she talking about? I turned toward him. His face was pale, eyes searching. For the first time, he looked at me like a stranger. For the first time, my son looked at me with fear, not of me, but of how little he knew me. Victoria watched the moment like a spectator enjoying her own show. Interesting, she murmured. I took a steady breath. You're invested in my past, Victoria. Why? She smiled faintly. Because sometimes the past predicts who wins. Lisa's voice wavered. Can we please stop? No one listened. When dinner ended, it was like stepping off a tightrope. Michael kissed my cheek goodbye, confusion still clouding his eyes. Victoria walked me to the elevator, her perfume thick and sweet. You really are remarkable, she said softly. I can't tell if I admire you or envy you. Then you finally understand me, I said. Her hand brushed my sleeve. You and I don't stop once we start. I'm aware. The elevator opened. I stepped inside. She stayed in the doorway, smiling. As the doors began to close, her reflection lingered in the glass. Smiling, even as the world blurred her away. The elevator dinged. The faint sound of her laugh followed me down, thin and metallic. That laugh haunted the silence long after the doors opened, because now it wasn't just a game of pride. It was a game of history, and Victoria had just proven she knew mine. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I'd left Victoria's home, her voice lingered, soft, deliberate, sliding through the quiet like perfume that refused to fade. "You left Geneva in 2011, didn't you?" She'd said it so casually, but the precision cut deep. She knew. Not just what I'd done, but when. By morning, the apartment felt smaller. I paced the floor, coffee untouched, curtains half open to the gray light outside. Work notifications buzzed across my phone, but my mind was still in that boardroom a continent away. Geneva. Duval. The choice. A memory flickered, the scent of polished wood and burnt espresso. A conference room too cold for comfort. Papers spread like confessions. Gabriel Duval's hand on my shoulder whispering, "Trust me. Alina." Then the sound of a pen scratching my name across a line I shouldn't have signed. That was the smell of betrayal, coffee and ink. And now Victoria had found it. At work, everything looked normal. The skyline glared bright and clean beyond my office windows. Yet every reflection carried her silhouette, faint and waiting. Halfway through the morning, my assistant Clara peeked in. "Call from Europe, Miss Carter. Said it's urgent." I hesitated. "Put it through." A voice I hadn't heard in years, smooth, unhurried, dangerous in its calm. "Alina." "Mr. Duval." Still formal, he chuckled. "Someone's been asking questions. About you. About Geneva," I swallowed. "Who?" She didn't give her name. English accent. "New dates. Knew you left after the merger collapsed." "Victoria Collins," I whispered. "Ah, so she's yours to handle then." His tone softened. "Be careful, Alina. Stories spread faster the second time." "I've noticed," I said quietly. The line clicked dead, leaving only static and the echo of his voice. That night, I unlocked the drawer I'd avoided for years. Inside lay a stack of old files and a single photograph, a boardroom handshake frozen in glass light. I was there in the corner, younger, trusting. Gabriel beside me smiling. I touched the photo's edge. My throat tightened. Then, the faintest trace of jasmine. Her perfume. It shouldn't have been there. I looked toward the door. Closed. Locked. Still, the scent lingered. Sweet, patient, knowing. It felt like she'd left the air itself listening. I stood perfectly still until it faded, leaving the room colder than before. The next morning, "Someone knocked, Michael." "Mom," he said, stepping in. "We need to talk." He looked drained, his voice tight. "Victoria called Lisa. Said she's worried about you. Said people lost money because of you." "Of course she did." I turned away. "She's using you." "She didn't sound like it," he said quietly. "She sounded scared. For you." I laughed softly, brittle. "Fear is her favorite costume." He hesitated. "So, there is something?" I met his eyes. "You want honesty?" Geneva wasn't a scandal. It was a sacrifice. Meaning what? Meaning I took the blame for someone else's greed, to keep worse men from destroying what we'd built. He stared at me, disbelief widening his eyes. You lied to everyone?" "For survival," I said. "For you," He looked at me like I was a stranger. And for the first time, I couldn't blame him. Then he turned and left. The door closed with a softness that hurt more than anger ever could. Later that night, my email chimed. Subject: You were never the only one in that room. Attached: the same Geneva photo, a red circle drawn around my face. No message, just that. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The air felt wrong again, still carrying that faint jasmine note. Impossible and precise. I whispered to the empty room, "All right, Victoria. You've made your move." The next morning, a new envelope slid under my door. Heavy cream paper, gold edges, the Women's Charity Gala, hosted by Victoria Collins. At the bottom, written in looping script, "I'd love to see you." Of course. A public stage, cameras, applause, perfect cover for confrontation. I folded the invitation slowly. My pulse steadied, not from calm, but from choice. If she wanted an audience, she'd get one. That evening, I stood by the window as the city flickered awake. Rain traced slow trails down the glass, each drop catching the light before it vanished. "We'd both built our empires on silence," I whispered. "But silence doesn't last forever." Because in 2 nights, beneath chandeliers and champagne, the truth we'd both buried would finally come up for air, and neither of us knew who'd drown first. The night of the gala arrived like a slow storm. From my apartment window, I watched the city glitter, bright, careless, alive. But inside me, something quieted. The kind of calm that comes before confrontation, when silence feels like armor. Ben waited downstairs in the car, his posture as steady as ever. "Ready, ma'am?" "As I'll ever be," I said. The drive was silent. Rain streaked across the windshield in thin silver lines. The world outside looked blurred, almost unreal. Inside the car, the air hummed with expectation. When we arrived, photographers clustered outside the glass doors, flashes blooming like lightning. The hotel loomed tall and polished, its chandeliers glowing like cages of light. Ben opened my door. "Want me to wait close?" "Yes," I said. "Just in case." Inside, the sound of champagne and polite laughter filled the air. The scent of roses and perfume mixed into something sharp and artificial. I could spot her instantly. Victoria. Collins, standing beneath the grand staircase, wrapped in pale gold silk, every inch the queen of the evening. She saw me before I spoke. Her smile flickered like a candle, warm on the surface but with a shadow underneath. "Alina," she said, gliding toward me. "You came." "I was invited," I said. She laughed softly, looping her arm through mine as though we were dear friends. "You look wonderful. I hope you don't mind. I gave you a little introduction earlier." Should I be flattered or concerned? "Both," she said sweetly. Her perfume, jasmine of course, drifted close. It hit me like memory and warning at once. We walked together through the glittering crowd, faces turned as we passed. Whispers followed, admiration mixed with curiosity. It was her arena, but I knew how to navigate rooms like this. I'd built entire careers on reading unspoken things. A man in a tailored tuxedo approached. "Mrs. Collins," he said, "always a pleasure." And this, Victoria said, turning gracefully, is Mrs. Alina Carter, the woman who once ran circles around Geneva's best financiers. The air shifted. The man's eyebrows rose. Ah, that's Alina Carter. I smiled. You make it sound like a ghost story. Victoria's laugh was honey smooth. Some stories never die. I held her gaze. Only the ones people keep retelling. The man excused himself quickly, discomfort clear in his smile. I leaned slightly toward her. You're efficient. I'll give you that. I told you, she said. I don't stop once I start. Her tone was playful, but her eyes glimmered with intent. The evening moved in waves of polite conversation and shallow compliments. I could feel Victoria circling, her attention drifting, then snapping back, like a cat toying with a bird it doesn't intend to kill yet. At one point, I caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Standing behind me, her smile frozen, watching me through glass. For a heartbeat, we didn't move. Predator and prey. Only neither of us knew who was which anymore. Then, near the edge of the ballroom, I saw Michael and Lisa arrive. Lisa waved, hesitant. Michael didn't. His face was unreadable, his jaw set tight. Victoria noticed too. Ah, she said, eyes bright. Family reunion. I turned to her. Don't. She smiled. I wouldn't dream of it. But she was already moving toward them. I followed, each step measured. The crowd seemed to thin between us, the sound of music softening, slowing. Michael, she said, her tone warm, motherly. You came. How lovely. Mrs. Collins, he said politely. It's your event. I thought it was the right thing to do. How responsible, she said. Your mother must be proud. He hesitated. I'm trying to understand her. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Aren't we all? Victoria, I said quietly. This isn't the place. She turned to me, that smile widening. But it's the perfect place, dear. Public. Polite. Safe. The words felt like a knife hidden inside a compliment. As speeches began, I stood at the back of the room. Victoria took the stage, her presence commanding, graceful. She spoke about charity, ambition, the importance of lifting other women. Her words danced beautifully, carefully chosen, seemingly kind. But between the lines, I heard something else. Some women, she said, her eyes skimming the crowd, spend their lives running from mistakes instead of owning them. But I believe redemption comes from visibility, from truth. A murmur rippled through the room. Her gaze found me. For a second, everything else disappeared. The applause, the cameras, the music. Just her eyes and mine. I smiled thinly, refusing to flinch. When her speech ended, the room erupted in polite cheers. She stepped down from the stage, glowing under the spotlight's approval. Lovely speech, I said when she approached. Thank you, she said sweetly. I do my best to tell real stories. Careful, I said. Real stories have consequences. Her voice dropped low enough that only I could hear it. Oh, I'm counting on that. The rest of the night unfolded like a performance neither of us wanted to end. A toast here, a glance there. Every time I turned, she was within sight, smiling, whispering, watching. Then, through the noise, I heard something else, a whisper from behind the champagne table. "Check the screens," a man murmured to someone. She said to load it now. My chest tightened. Before I could move, I felt someone near me. Michael. He stood beside me on the terrace, hands in his pockets, face pale in the moonlight. "Mom," he said quietly. "Is she right? About Geneva?" "She's not right," I said. "She's dangerous." He looked at me, and there it was again. That flicker of fear, confusion, love all tangled. "I don't know who to believe," he whispered. "Then believe what you've seen," I said. "Not what you've been told." I hesitated, then added softer, "You know me, Michael. You always have. Don't let her rewrite that." He nodded slowly, then walked back inside, leaving me in the cool air. The city lights shimmered across the glass, fractured like broken truths. When I returned to the ballroom, something had changed. The crowd had shifted its attention toward the projection screen at the front of the hall. The event photographer had begun displaying images from earlier in the evening, smiling faces, clinking glasses, laughter. Then, an image that didn't belong, a photograph from Geneva. The same one. The boardroom. The handshake. Me. Gasps rippled through the room. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. No music, no chatter, just the soft buzz of the projector, and my name, hanging unspoken in the silence. Victoria stood near the control table, eyes on the screen, her expression a perfect mask of surprise. "Oh dear," she murmured just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "How did that get there?" I turned to her slowly. "Careful, Victoria. You've mistaken exposure for victory, and they're never the same thing." She smiled faintly. "Darling, that's where the fun begins." The ghosts of Geneva had finally arrived, uninvited, unstoppable. For the first time, it wasn't just my past on display. It was my son's faith, my name, everything I'd bled to protect. It was a war. By dawn, the gala had become a headline. Everywhere, gossip blogs, business feeds, social media, the same story, on repeat. Charity host exposes scandalous past of finance executive. It was the kind of story people loved. A neat mix of glamour, betrayal, and quiet revenge. The headline blinked on a cafe screen across the street. My face beneath the words, "Scandalous past." Even from here, I could see the comments climbing like flames. I watched it unfold from the kitchen, coffee cooling beside me. The apartment felt colder than usual, as if even the walls had stepped back. Outside, the city hummed, unaware, uninterested. But for me, everything had shifted. I'd been here, before, at the edge of ruin, when everyone pretends they're shocked but secretly thrilled. The difference now was simple. Last time I was alone. This time she'd dragged my son into it. The phone buzzed again. Another message, another headline, another friend offering sympathy that felt like surveillance. When the call finally came, I almost didn't answer, but his name flashed on the screen. Michael. "Mom," he said, voice rough. "You need to see this." "I have. I said. No, not the news. The comments. People are saying you stole from investors. I closed my eyes. They don't know what they're talking about. Then tell me what really happened. The question hung there, quiet, heavy. Not yet, I said softly. Not until I know what game she's playing. He exhaled, the sound sharp. You always do this. You talk like the world is a chessboard. Maybe because it is, I said. And Victoria just made her first real move. She said she only wanted truth, he whispered. She sounded hurt. Michael, no, he said, cutting me off. Maybe you're right. Maybe she's cruel. But at least she's honest about it. The line went dead. I told myself it didn't hurt. But the silence after him was louder than truth. I stared at the phone, the quiet filling every corner of the room. By noon, reporters had begun circling the office building. My assistant Clara slipped in nervously. There are 2 outside, she said. One from the Ledger, one from the Herald. They're asking about Geneva. Say nothing, I told her. No comments. No statements. Not yet, she nodded, hesitated, then added. They said someone from Geneva has already spoken. My pulse stilled. Who? They wouldn't say. Then find out, I said. Quietly. By afternoon, I was back in the car. Not to flee, but to think. The city blurred past, streets familiar but meaningless. Ben kept his eyes forward. He didn't speak until we reached the waterfront. Want me to stop here? Yes, I said. Just a few minutes. The water was dark and restless. Gulls drifted low over the surface, their cries cutting through the wind. I leaned against the railing, breathing in the cold. It stung, but it cleared my head. In reflection, I could still see that image from the gala, the boardroom photograph projected behind crystal chandeliers, every flash of the camera capturing my stillness. I'd survived worse than public shame. But humiliation, that slow, deliberate kind, was its own kind of art. And Victoria had always known how to paint it beautifully. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Elena Carter, a man's voice said, smooth, neutral. This is Daniel Voss. I'm with the Ledger. I wanted to ask about Geneva. I'm not giving interviews. I'm not asking for one, he said calmly. I'm offering context. Context? You're not the only one who's been called from that year. Someone's leaking internal memos, files, signatures. They point to a cover-up. I froze. That's impossible. Maybe, he said. But the documents are real enough to make noise. And from what I've seen, Victoria Collins isn't the source. The world seemed to tilt. Then who is? That's what I'm trying to find out, he said. But whoever they are, they know where to look. That night, I met Clara at the office again. The building was empty, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing off marble. She handed me a small envelope. This came by courier. No name. Just your initials. Inside, a single photo. Geneva again, but not the one from before. This time, it wasn't the handshake. It was the aftermath. Me, standing alone at the conference window, rain streaking down the glass. My face reflected beside Gabriel Duval's, blurred, ghostly, distant Gabriel Duval, the man who'd taught me the rules of survival, and then rewrote them without me. On the back, a single line written in black ink. You weren't supposed to survive that. The handwriting was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath me. For a moment, I could feel the air shift, the way it used to in boardrooms before something collapsed. Clara spoke softly. "Ma'am, what does it mean?" "It means," I said, staring at the photo, "we're not dealing with one enemy." Later that evening, as the city dimmed, I poured myself a glass of wine I didn't intend to finish. The quiet was almost kind, until my phone buzzed again. One new message, no name. Just a file attachment and a short note. "If you want to protect your son, stop pretending you're innocent." My heart stopped. Attached was a document, internal, encrypted, dated 2011. It was a transaction ledger, one I'd never seen before, bearing my electronic signature. A transfer of funds I hadn't authorized. I scrolled down and froze when I saw the final name on the authorization chain, Gabriel Duval. I set the phone down. My reflection stared back from the black screen. Tired, still, unyielding. He'd promised to protect me. Instead, he'd built his escape on my name, and now someone else was tearing open the wound he left behind. I walked to the window. Below, the city light stretched out like a map of consequences. Somewhere in that glittering maze, Victoria was smiling, proud of her chaos, sure she'd won. She didn't realize there was someone else behind the curtain, someone who wanted more than humiliation, someone who wanted destruction. I thought Victoria was my enemy. But Geneva was full of ghosts, and not all of them belonged to me. One of them was still out there, alive, watching. And the game I thought I'd survived had only just begun. The next morning began like any other, but everything felt wrong. Emails poured in, sympathy disguised as curiosity. Every subject line felt like a whisper. Geneva. Scandal. Me. The office air was heavy, colder. Even the coffee machine hissed like it was saying my name. By noon, Clara stepped in, holding a note. "This was hand-delivered," she said. "No courier this time." The paper was ivory, folded once. Just an address and a time. 3 p.m. Room 607, the Langston Hotel. No signature. But the handwriting, perfect, looping, deliberate, needed none. Victoria Collins. I stared at it for a long moment before saying, "Cancel my afternoon." The Langston was quiet. One of those discreet, old hotels that made privacy look elegant. The concierge didn't ask my name. He only nodded and gestured toward the elevator, as though he'd been told to expect me. Room 607 waited at the end of a long hallway, the carpet swallowing every sound. I knocked once. The door opened. Victoria stood there, dressed in black, simple, sleek, severe. "Not a hostess tonight. A strategist, Elena," she said softly. "Come in." The room was dim, curtains drawn. A bottle of untouched champagne sat on the table, condensation trailing down the glass like nervous sweat. I didn't sit. "Why am I here?" She gestured toward the window. "Because someone wants us both to fall, and they're not hiding anymore." I crossed my arms. "You finally believe that?" "Oh, I've always known someone else was moving pieces," she said. "I just assumed it was you." "Not this time," I replied. Her eyes flickered. "Then who?" I took the photo from my bag and laid it on the table, the one from the envelope. She leaned in, her polished calm faltering for a breath. "Where did you get this?" "It was delivered to my office yesterday." Her gaze sharpened. "That handwriting." "It's his. Gabriel Duval's," I said. She nodded slowly. "I thought he was dead." So did I. For a second. Neither of us looked like enemies, just survivors of the same wound. We sat opposite each other like rival generals forced to share a map. She finally said, "I have contacts in Geneva. If he's resurfaced, they'll know. I can make a call." "Fine," I said. "But I want to be there." "Of course," she said. "I don't trust you either." That almost made me smile. She dialed quickly, her French fluid and sharp. I caught fragments. Duval, 2011, dossier, vivant, alive. When she hung up, she looked pale. "Well?" I asked. "A clinic outside Zurich," she said. "No records, no photographs, just a patient who paid in cash and asked for silence." "Meaning he's alive," I said. She nodded. "And watching." Later that afternoon, I returned home. The city glowed gold and indifferent. Michael was waiting at the door. He looked tired, not angry anymore, just older somehow. "You met with her," he said. "Yes. Why?" "Because there's something bigger than the two of us. And if we don't find out who's pulling the strings, we both lose." He shook his head. "I don't understand you. After everything she's done, you still—" "I don't trust her," I said. "But sometimes the only way to expose poison is to let it touch air." He looked at me a long moment. "You sound like him." My chest tightened. "Like who?" "Duval," he said quietly. "Lisa found an old interview. Strategy, control, risk. You sound exactly like that." I turned away before he could see my face. "Then maybe that's the problem." He hesitated, then said softly, "Mom." "What if he's alive?" I looked out the window at the skyline bleeding into dusk. "Then he's not finished." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the city breathing through the glass. Everything had become a pattern. Whispers, warnings, reflections. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Check your mail." I stood, every nerve alert, and went to the door. A plain envelope lay on the floor. No postage, no handwriting. Inside, a single USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, then opened to a single video file. Geneva Conference 2011.mp4. I hesitated, then pressed play. A boardroom appeared. The lighting was sterile, white. People in suits moved in and out of frame. Then Gabriel Duval, standing at the head of the table, smiling. He was younger, but his confidence hadn't aged. He turned toward the camera and said, "Keep this off record. I'll handle the fallout." Then, my voice, faint, off-screen, "You can't sign that. It'll trace back to," then static. A jump cut. And suddenly in his face again. Closer this time, smiling. "Tell her I remember," he said. "Tell Alina she owes me one more favor." The file ended. I sat motionless. The laptop screen glowed in the dark like an accusation. He was alive. And he wasn't hiding. Every lie I'd buried in Geneva clawed its way back to the surface. Names, signatures, promises. All of it breathing again. I closed the laptop slowly, pulse steadying not from calm, but from purpose. Victoria wanted a war of reputation. Gabriel wanted leverage, and I wanted truth, but the cost of finding it would be everything I had left. Because now I knew the truth wasn't buried in Geneva. It was walking, breathing, waiting. And the game I thought I'd survived had only just begun. I never believed I'd sit across from Victoria Collins without wanting to end her. But survival has its own rules, and revenge makes strange partnerships. We met again 3 nights later at an empty restaurant after closing. The manager had been paid to disappear. Only candlelight remained, trembling against silver and glass. She arrived first. Of course she did. Still immaculate, still unreadable. "Alina," she said as I walked in, "you look tired." "War does that to people," I said. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. We both knew this wasn't peace, just a pause between strikes. She poured wine for both of us. "I didn't touch mine. He's alive," she began. My contact in Zurich confirmed more. The clinic kept no files, but payments came from an offshore account, the same one tied to his old Geneva firm. "So he's funding this," I said. "Or someone is funding it for him," she replied. "Either way, he's not done." She slid her phone across the table. On the screen, a grainy still image of Gabriel Duval, older, thinner, walking through an airport corridor. The timestamp was 6 weeks old. "Lisbon," she said. He vanished 2 days later. I didn't need more. That posture, that calm, it was the same man who'd vanished years ago. Still believing he owned the room. Still moving pieces only he could see. "He's taunting us," I said. "Or warning us," Victoria murmured. For a moment, silence again. Sharp, fragile. Outside, the city lights trembled like candle flames. We spread our notes across the table, printed emails, timelines, receipts. Everything pointed to Geneva, 2011, the year of signatures, silence, and blame. Victoria traced one document with her finger. "This transfer, it's identical to the one in that leaked file. Same pattern, same shell account, which means whoever leaked it had access to his system. Or yours." "Mine was erased," I said. "Nothing is ever erased," she replied. I almost smiled. "You sound like him." Her eyes softened for a moment, the first true crack I'd seen in her composure. "Maybe that's why I hate him so much. He taught us both to think like him." For a second, neither of us looked like enemies, just survivors of the same wound. Hours later, she leaned back, exhaustion finally showing through the polish. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Which part?" "Becoming the thing he built." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I said, "Regret doesn't undo survival." She nodded slowly, as if she already knew. Then her phone vibrated. A message flashed. She read it, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" I asked. "A remote login, New York." I froze. "Your city, Alina," she said. Before I could respond, my phone lit up too. One new message. "From unknown, subject, look closer, attached, a single image, Michael, standing outside a private bank. Talking to a man I recognized instantly, Gabriel Duval. The photo blurred as my pulse roared in my ears. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Victoria didn't speak. She just stared at the photo, then at me, as if calculating which of us Duval had already won. The caption beneath read, "He came to me." Not the other way around. I felt the air leave my lungs. "He wouldn't," I whispered. "He doesn't even know, doesn't he?" She interrupted softly. "You told him nothing, remember? Maybe he's finding his own answers." I swallowed hard. "You think he's working with Duval?" "I think," she said carefully, "he's looking for the truth. And Gabriel knows how to sell it." The words hit harder than any headline ever could. I stood up, pacing. He must have followed something. A trail, a clue. Duval found him first. Victoria's voice was calm. Too calm. "He's baiting you, Alina, both of you. Divide and control, it's what he does best. Then we end it before he can." Her lips curved slightly. "Together?" I hesitated, then nodded. "For now." She extended her hand, slow and deliberate. I stared at it. For the briefest moment, the candlelight caught her diamond ring, refracting across the table. Beautiful, sharp, deceptive. I took her hand. Her skin was cold. "Don't mistake this for trust," I said. "I wouldn't dream of it," she replied. That night, I drove home through a city that no longer felt like mine. Every light looked like an interrogation. Every shadow, a listener. When I reached my apartment, the door was slightly open. Inside, nothing moved. No signs of force. But on the table where I'd left my laptop lay another envelope. No name. Just a single word written in familiar ink. Soon. I opened it. Inside, a printed still frame from the same video. Gabriel's face, closer this time, eyes locked on mine. Across the bottom, a handwritten note. "He's not your son anymore." The walls felt closer. The city is quieter. For the first time, I wasn't sure who the real enemy was. Because when the past comes back to life, it doesn't come alone. It comes for everything you love. And this time, Gabriel Duval wasn't just rewriting my history, he was rewriting my bloodline. Morning came without sound. The city outside was gray, washed clean by rain, but the quiet wasn't peace. It was warning. I'd barely slept. Every thought since that message had burned like a countdown. Michael, Gabriel, Victoria. The triangle had finally closed. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single text, Pier 14. 1 hour. No name. But the handwriting in the image attached, unmistakable. Gabriel Duval. The pier was nearly empty when I arrived. The air smelled of salt and rust, the kind of cold that seeps under skin. He stood near the edge, hands in his coat pockets, watching the gray horizon as if waiting for applause. Time had carved lines into his face, but his eyes, still sharp, still calculating, hadn't aged a day. "Hello, Alina." I stopped several feet away. "You're alive," he smiled faintly. "You sound disappointed." "I was told you were dead." "You were supposed to believe that." He turned slightly, glancing at the water. "I didn't think it would take you this long to find me." "I wasn't looking," I said. "You found me," he chuckled softly. "Always deflecting blame. That's what I liked about you. Your composure." "You ruined lives with that composure," I said. "I gave you power," he countered. "You just weren't strong enough to keep it." The words hit like cold wind. He was baiting me, as he always had. Then behind him movement. "Michael." He stepped into view, hesitant but determined, his eyes flicking between us. "Mom," he said quietly. My heart stuttered. Michael, why are you here? I asked him to meet me, he said. I wanted answers. From him? My voice sharpened. You think he tells the truth? He showed me documents, Michael said. Signatures, transfers. He said you took the fall for something you helped create. I stared at him. My son, caught in the web I'd tried to burn. I helped build a world that broke people like you, I said softly. That's what he never told you. Gabriel smiled thinly. And yet here you are, still justifying the architecture. Don't speak to him, I snapped. You don't get to. Michael looked at me, eyes searching. So who's lying now? For a heartbeat, none of us spoke. The wind carried only the sound of the waves slapping against the pier, steady, merciless. A new voice cut through the air. Enough. Victoria. She stepped from the shadows near a car, coat pulled tight, expression unreadable. Of course you'd both come here, she said. Predictable, really. Gabriel's smile curved. You always did love a grand entrance. I prefer controlled conclusions, she replied. She turned to me. He's been moving money again, offshore. Same shell accounts from 2011, the ones you thought were erased. You've been tracking him? I asked. Always, she said. He left traces in Lisbon. I followed them here. Gabriel tilted his head. How loyal of you. After everything I taught you, you still think you can win. Victoria's tone stayed even. No, Gabriel. I don't plan to win. I plan to finish. The tension shifted, the air turning brittle. Gabriel reached into his coat. My pulse quickened, but it wasn't a weapon. A small flash drive gleamed in his hand. He tossed it to the ground between us. Everything you want. Every file. Every account. Every signature. The truth. Take it, I didn't move. What's the catch? He smiled. You won't like what's in it. Meaning? He looked at Michael. She wasn't the only one who betrayed me. Michael froze. I turned slowly. What did you do? He hesitated. I met with him just once. I wanted to clear your name. I thought if I could find proof. Gabriel laughed softly. And he did. Beautifully naive, just like you. Stop, I said. You used him to get to me? Of course I did, he replied. The son always pays for the mother's silence. Victoria's voice was calm, cold. You're done manipulating people, Gabriel, he smirked. Am I? You're still standing here, aren't you? Something in me settled then. Not rage, not fear, but clarity. I stepped forward and picked up the drive. It felt heavier than metal. You always said truth was a weapon, I said. You were right, he smiled, confident. Then use it. I looked at Michael, then at Victoria. No, I'm done using anything. Without another word, I walked to the pier's edge and tossed the drive into the water. It vanished beneath the surface, a small ripple swallowed by gray. For the first time, his calm cracked, just for a second. The man who'd controlled everything finally had nothing left to hold. Gabriel's voice trembled. What have you done? Destroyed your leverage, I said. You can't control what doesn't exist. He started to move, but headlights cut through the fog. 2 black cars rolled up. Federal agents stepped out, badges catching pale light. Gabriel froze as Victoria's expression hardened. You taught me precision, Gabriel, she said. Consider this my final lesson. His eyes widened, fear replacing arrogance. He didn't fight as they took him and just looked back at me, hollow, defeated. You can bury files, Alina, he murmured. Not consequences. They led him away. The sound of the waves swallowed his voice. When the pier fell silent again, Victoria stood beside me, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the horizon. You always were dramatic, she said. You always were late, I replied. A faint smile ghosted her lips. So what now? Now, I said, we disappear. She nodded. Separately, I hope. Always, I said. She turned and walked away, heels striking wet pavement until her figure dissolved into fog. Michael stood a few steps behind me, trembling. Mom, he whispered. Did we win? I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy who'd once trusted me to make sense of the world. There are no wins in survival, I said. Only what's left of you when it's over. He took my hand, hesitant, childlike, and for the first time in years, I let him. The water below rippled softly, swallowing the last reflection of the man who once controlled everything. They say truth sets you free, but freedom always costs something. And as the morning light hit the pier, I finally understood. Some wars aren't meant to be won, only survived.